So by now, you should have completed here and gone over compare and contrast between these two graphs as a warm-up activity. The first thing I want to tell you today is what it is that we will be learning. And so you can follow along in your guided handout so that you can be sure that you're getting the information all together. So we have some objectives for today's class. We're going to identify the difference between, and here's what we're doing, linear functions, and the new thing that we're talking about now, quadratic functions. Quadratic functions. And so the graph that you saw, the two, this is a linear function, this is a quadratic function, and there's some major differences between them. That's what we'll be talking about. Also, we'll determine whether the quadratic function has a maximum or a minimum. So that's actually some new vocabulary that we will be discussing probably in tomorrow's part of the lesson. And then lastly, graphing a quadratic function and giving its domain and range. Remember, when we are graphing any type of equations or functions, there is always a domain and range, an input and an output, depending on what the rule is when you put in your numbers. And so moving on, how do you identify a quadratic function? And so here it says the function y equals x squared is shown in the graph. Well, remember from the notes on the learning station that a quadratic function is going to have an exponent here of 2. And so we have y equals x squared is shown here. And a quadratic function has a graph that is the shape of a parabola. That's one of our vocabulary words that you have taken down in the notes. Notice it's not a linear function because it's not a straight line. And that's what makes it a quadratic, is that it forms a parabola. Remember, the parabola is a curved graph. It's not a straight line graph. A quadratic function is any function at all that can be written in this following standard form. So here's your standard form for a quadratic function. You can fill on the line. Y equals ax squared plus bx plus c. Now that's a little bit different from our linear function standard form that we have learned about previously. So what I would like for you to do is take a moment and write down what is the linear function standard form, what is the quadratic function standard form, and let's do a very brief compare and contrast. If you need a little bit of hint, well, we just saw that the quadratic function standard form is y equals ax squared plus by plus c. And the linear function, if you remember, is going to be ax plus by equals c. So there are definitely some similarities and some differences. Take a brief moment to go ahead and fill out those, and then we'll reconvene.